Let's get one thing straight. Your worth is not up for debate. It's not something that fluctuates based on who texts back, who acknowledges you, or who decides to give you their attention. Your worth is something you carry, something you establish, and something you project. And the moment you start seeking validation from others, you're handing over control of something that should be completely non-negotiable. Think about it. How many times have you found yourself overanalyzing a situation where someone didn't reply? You start wondering if you said the wrong thing, if you came off too strong, or maybe even if you weren't interesting enough. That mindset is poison. It puts you in a position of self-doubt, making you question yourself over something that in reality probably had nothing to do with you. Maybe they were busy. Maybe they're terrible at communication. Maybe they're just not that important in your life's bigger picture. But here's the problem. When you start questioning yourself, you slowly chip away at your own confidence. And confidence is the foundation of your value. It's what makes you walk into a room and command attention. It's what makes people stop and listen when you speak. Confidence isn't built on whether or not someone responds to you. It's built on what you believe about yourself, regardless of what anyone else thinks. Look at the most successful, magnetic people in the world. Do they spend their time waiting around for someone to acknowledge them? No, they move with purpose. They act like they belong at the top. And because they carry themselves that way, the world responds accordingly. People naturally gravitate toward those who know their own value. But the second you start begging for attention, you're telling the world that you're unsure of yourself. And if you don't believe in your own worth, why should anyone else? This is where most people get it wrong. They assume that being valuable means trying harder to get people to notice them. They send another message, try to explain themselves, look for excuses to re-engage. They think that proving their worth means pushing harder for recognition. But real value doesn't beg. Real value doesn't chase. Real value commands attention simply by existing. Imagine a diamond sitting on a table. A real diamond doesn't need to convince you that it's valuable. It doesn't need to flash a neon sign saying, "Look at me, I'm worth something." No, people already know. They recognize it for what it is because value speaks for itself. And just like that diamond, you should never feel the need to prove your worth to someone who doesn't recognize it. But here's the kicker. You have to believe it first. You can't expect others to see your value if you don't own it yourself. If you walk around seeking approval, if you allow someone's silence to make you feel less than, then you're signaling that your worth is dependent on external validation. And that's the fastest way to lose your power. So what do you do instead? You stop waiting. You stop overthinking. You stop placing your self-esteem in the hands of people who may or may not see you for what you truly are. Instead, you double down on yourself. You put in the work to become someone who is undeniable. You build a life so strong, so fulfilling, that whether or not someone responds to you becomes completely irrelevant. You start seeing yourself as someone who deserves attention, not because you need it, but because you bring value to the table. And when you own that mindset, you won't have to chase. People will naturally start paying attention. Because nothing is more attractive, more powerful than someone who knows who they are and refuses to settle for anything less than what they deserve. Desperation is one of the fastest ways to lose power in any situation. The moment you start chasing someone, whether it's for attention, validation, or even an answer, you are signaling that they have something you need. And when you give that kind of power away, you're no longer in control. You become dependent on their response, their acknowledgement, their approval. That is a dangerous place to be because the more desperate you appear, the less valuable you seem. Think about the last time you saw someone who was overly eager to get someone's attention. Maybe it was a friend who kept texting someone who wasn't responding. Maybe it was a coworker who kept trying to impress their boss. Maybe it was someone in your own life who just wouldn't take the hint that they weren't being prioritized. What was your reaction? You probably cringed a little. You probably felt secondhand embarrassment watching them try so hard. That's because neediness is unattractive in relationships, in business, and in life. When someone doesn't respond to you, your next move determines everything. Most people go into panic mode. They start justifying the silence, making up reasons why they haven't heard back yet. They send another message to follow up. They try to remind the person that they exist, hoping they'll finally get a response. This is the worst thing you can do. Not only does it make you seem desperate, but it also shifts the dynamic entirely. Now you're the one pursuing, and they're the one deciding whether or not to give you attention. That imbalance is a recipe for being ignored even more. Now let's flip the script. What happens when you don't chase? What happens when, instead of waiting around for a reply, you completely remove your emotional investment from the situation? You take back control. You are no longer dependent on their response because you've already made a decision. If they want to engage, they will. If they don't, it's their loss. The strongest people in the world don't wait to be acknowledged. They don't hesitate or second guess themselves when someone doesn't reply. They move forward without missing a beat. They understand that their value is not determined by someone else's willingness to respond. And because they carry themselves with that level of certainty, people naturally gravitate toward them. This is what most people fail to realize. Control is attractive. Confidence is attractive. And nothing exudes confidence more than being completely unfazed by someone's lack of response. When you stop caring about whether or not someone replies, you instantly change the energy. Instead of seeking validation, you become the one who decides who is worthy of your attention. Think of it like this. Imagine you walk into a high-end store, the kind of store where the prices aren't listed because, frankly, if you have to ask, you probably can't afford it. The salespeople don't chase after you, begging you to buy something. They don't try to convince you that their products are worth it. They know what they're selling is valuable, and they operate from a place of confidence. That's exactly how you need to approach communication. When you send a message or reach out to someone, you are extending an opportunity. You are offering a conversation, a connection, or a collaboration. If they choose to ignore it, that's on them. But what you don't do is lower your worth by chasing them. The second you do that, you go from being the high-value individual to someone who is trying too hard. And people don't respect those who try too hard. It's all about how you carry yourself. If you believe you have something valuable to offer, whether it's in a relationship, a business deal, or even just a conversation, then you don't need to convince anyone of that. You simply extend the offer and let them decide. If they recognize the value, great. If they don't, you move on without hesitation. That's power. That's control. That's the energy that commands respect. Where most people go wrong is thinking that persistence will eventually win someone over. They believe that if they just send one more message, if they just explain themselves better, if they just keep trying, eventually the other person will come around. But that's not how it works. The more you push, the more the other person pulls away. It's human nature. We don't appreciate what comes too easily. Think about it. When was the last time you deeply valued something that was handed to you with no effort? When things are given too freely, they lose their meaning. The same applies to attention. When you make yourself too available, when you beg for acknowledgement, you lose the very thing that makes you desirable, your sense of self-worth. So instead of reacting with desperation, you respond with indifference. Not coldness, not rudeness, just an unshakable certainty that whether or not they reply, you're still good. Your value remains intact. Your confidence doesn't waver. And ironically, that's when they'll start to notice you, because people are drawn to those who don't need them but choose them. Indifference is one of the most powerful psychological tools you can master. It's not about being cold or careless. It's about refusing to let someone else's response, or lack thereof, dictate your emotions, actions, or sense of self-worth. When you learn to detach emotionally from the outcome of any situation, you gain an advantage that most people never develop. You become unshakable. You become someone who commands attention without even trying. Most people operate from a place of emotional dependence. When they send a message, they're waiting for a reply. When they enter a conversation, they're hoping for validation. When they take action, they're expecting recognition. And when they don't get it, they start spiraling. Their mind races with thoughts like, did I say something wrong? Did they not like me? Am I not interesting enough? This kind of thinking is destructive because it places your sense of worth in someone else's hands. The moment you allow someone's response or silence to affect you, you've given them power over you. That's why indifference is so critical. When you adopt a mindset of true detachment, you take all of that power back. Now let's be clear, indifference doesn't mean you don't care about anything. It doesn't mean you never put in effort or that you act like a robot with no emotions. What it does mean is that you refuse to be emotionally dependent on any single person's reaction. You refuse to let external factors dictate how you feel about yourself. You hold an unshakable belief that no matter what happens, you are still valuable, still confident, still in control. Think about the people who naturally attract attention. They're the ones who move with confidence, who seem like they don't need anything from anyone, who project the energy that says, I am complete on my own. That energy is magnetic because people are drawn to those who don't crave approval. The irony is that the less you seek validation, the more you get it. The moment you stop needing people to reply to you is the moment they start wondering why you're not chasing them. This is why so many high-status, high-value individuals carry themselves with an aura of effortless confidence. They don't beg for attention, they don't seek approval, and they certainly don't dwell on whether or not someone acknowledges them. They have an internal belief system that says, if you see my value, great. If you don't, that's your loss. And because they operate from that mindset, people want to be around them. When you fully embrace the power of indifference, you break free from the exhausting cycle of overthinking, overanalyzing, and over-explaining yourself. You no longer waste energy chasing people who don't reciprocate. You no longer need constant reassurance. You stop playing small to gain someone's attention because you know that real value doesn't beg, it commands. One of the most powerful ways to practice indifference is through non-reactivity. When someone ignores you, the worst thing you can do is react emotionally. No double texting, no asking if they got your message, no passive-aggressive posts designed to get their attention. You simply carry on as if nothing happened. Because in the grand scheme of things, nothing did. A lack of response is not a rejection. A lack of response is not an insult. A lack of response is just silence. And silence only has power if you allow it to. Most people don't realize this, but the way you react to being ignored determines whether or not people start respecting you. If you react with desperation, you reinforce the idea that you need their validation. But if you respond with indifference, if you act completely unbothered, it signals that you are someone of high value, someone whose time and energy is too important to waste worrying about something so small. And that in turn makes people start to see you differently. Think about it in terms of social dynamics. People naturally respect those who carry themselves with self-sufficiency. When you show that you're perfectly fine regardless of someone's attention, it creates an aura of mystery. It makes them wonder why you're not chasing. It makes them curious about what's so interesting about your life that you're not waiting around for them. And curiosity leads to attraction. The truth is, most people don't ignore you because they dislike you. They ignore you because they assume you'll still be there when they're ready to acknowledge you. But the moment you show that you are unaffected, that you have options, that their response is irrelevant to your sense of self-worth, That's when they start noticing. Because people always want what seems just out of reach. It all comes down to energy. Desperation repels. Indifference attracts. When you adopt the mindset that you don't need anyone's validation, you start carrying yourself differently. You stop over-explaining. You stop proving yourself. You stop waiting. You simply exist in a state of absolute certainty that you are enough, with or without their response. Nothing stings more than being ignored. It can feel like rejection, like disrespect, like you're invisible. But here's the reality. You have two choices when someone ignores you. You can let it consume you, let it eat away at your confidence, let it make you feel small, or you can flip the script. You can take that silence and turn it into motivation. You can make them regret ever thinking they could overlook you. The key to making someone regret ignoring you is not by chasing them, not by demanding their attention, and definitely not by acting out in frustration. The key is to rise so high that they can't ignore you even if they tried. You don't need revenge, you don't need closure. What you need is to become so undeniably successful, so confident, and so valuable that their silence turns into curiosity, then into admiration, and finally into regret. Regret happens when someone realizes they underestimated you, when they see you thriving without them, when they notice the opportunities you've created for yourself, when they realize that while they were ignoring you, you were leveling up. That's when it hits them. That's when they start wondering, did I make a mistake? Let's break this down into a clear strategy. 1, redirect your energy. The first and most important step is to shift your focus. The more energy you spend dwelling on someone who ignored you, the more power you give them. And that's exactly what you don't want. Instead of analyzing what went wrong, instead of waiting for them to come around, channel all that energy into yourself. Ask yourself, what areas of my life can I improve right now? What goals have I been putting off? How can I make my presence felt without ever reaching out again? When you redirect your energy into self-improvement, you automatically regain control. You no longer feel powerless because now you are your own priority. You take the focus off them and put it back on yourself where it should have been all along. 2, level up in every way possible. Success is the greatest response to being ignored. But let's be clear, this isn't about showing off or proving yourself to them. This is about proving yourself to you. If you were overlooked for a job opportunity, develop skills so undeniable that they regret not hiring you. If someone ignored your message, build a life so compelling that they wish they had been part of it. If someone took you for granted, evolve into the kind of person they could only dream of being around. Ways to level up. Career growth. Get better at what you do. Build new skills. Make yourself indispensable in your field. Physical presence. Take care of your health, your style, your fitness. When you look good, you feel good. Social circle. Expand your network. Surround yourself with high-value people. When you're in good company, you naturally become more attractive. Mindset. Develop unshakable confidence. Read, learn, grow. A powerful mind is impossible to ignore. When you focus on leveling up in these areas, you don't just become noticeable. You become unforgettable. 3, become the person they can't reach anymore. People always assume they have time. They assume they can ignore you today and that you'll still be there tomorrow. They assume they can take you for granted without consequences. But what happens when you outgrow them? That's when regret kicks in, when they realize that the version of you they ignored no longer exists. When they see that while they were wasting time, you were evolving. This doesn't mean cutting people off out of spite. It means growing at such a rapid rate that they can no longer relate to you. You're not playing the same game anymore. You're on a different level. And when they finally look up and realize what they missed, it's too late. 4, let your success speak for itself. Here's where most people mess up. They want to rub their success in the other person's face. They want to post about it, brag about it, make sure the person who ignored them sees how well they're doing. That's a mistake. Because the moment you try to force them to notice, you're still giving them power. The real power move, let your success speak for itself. Move in silence, then let the results be loud. Let them hear about your success from others. Let them notice you naturally without you ever seeking their attention. Because when they start seeing your name come up, when they notice your glow up, when they hear about your achievements, that's when it hits them. That's when they start to realize what they lost. 5, master the art of indifference. The final and most critical step, you don't care if they regret it or not. By the time they realize what they lost, you've already moved on. By the time they want to reconnect, you've already built a life where their presence is no longer needed. And that's what truly makes them regret ignoring you. Not just that you became successful, but that you became successful without them. At the end of the day, your growth is the best response. And when you focus entirely on yourself, you won't just make them regret ignoring you. You'll reach a point where their regret doesn't even matter.